Everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Getting a little more work done here. Starting to see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. That's cool. Alright, I broke into a package that's been sitting around for a couple weeks. Jim sent me this XL-76. Hi Leon, here's my XL-76 I bought off eBay. It was very dirty and greasy, but after cleaning it up I was very happy with my purchase. I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, this saw cleaned up nice. I'll show you the parts in a minute. In pulling it over, it had great compression and good spark, so I purchased some parts from you in what I thought would be all I'd need to go. In working on it, I must have pulled it over at least 100 times with no problems. Then I got to the point of gassing it up and starting it for the first time. The first pull, she locked up tight. And looking at it and moving it around, a couple of needle bearings fell out the muffler. Assuming you're going to have to tear it down, could you please contact me and let me know what your suggestions and thoughts are? Jim, my thoughts are, I wish you had bought any other XL-76. It is about as bad as I thought it would be when we exchanged emails. Let's take a look at some of this. So here is, those are the needles that Jim pulled out of the muffler port. I don't know if I should go in order here. Sure. So where the hell did I put the piston? There we go. What would have been visible? That is the part of the piston. I'm going to zoom this back out. Easier. That's the part of the piston that would have been visible through the muffler port. Enough to give a dude a whole lot of hope. Unfortunately, that was what was jamming her up. So two needles just ripped that piston all to hell. You probably already know the rest of the story. Ripped the cylinder all to pieces too. Now, that's not very bright. There's a gouge that runs from this transfer port right here all the way down, all the way to the top, and it's actually embedded right there. This one just gouged to the edge of the transfer port. So piston and cylinder, garbage. It doesn't stop there. I took the connecting rod off because clearly it was going to need a rod bearing. That is all that's left of the old rod bearing. I think there are about 7 intact needles there. All the rest, all the other, 29, 28, are ground up like donut sprinkles. So with that kind of damage, unfortunately, there's no way I could feel comfortable with reusing the rod or the crankshaft. It just... I mean, these aren't scored, but they're dull. And whether they're dull from heat or dull from metal grinding into them, I don't know. But that's not a healthy bearing surface. There are times where you guys have heard me say, ah, hell, I'd do it on one of my saws. I wouldn't do it on one of my saws. If I was building something up where I knew I'd have to put a piston and cylinder in something, I wouldn't reuse this bottom end. So when I got that off, I could see the crankshaft was the same way. Very dull. But even beyond that, look at all the metal buildup. That's steel. And this thing is coated. The drive case side crank bearing is shot. See all that play? I've never seen one that bad. Even one that was rusty that I loosened up. So it ran long enough to eat that bearing. But the crowning touch that I have never seen happen before. This is the cover on the flywheel side that you mount. If it had points and all that, it would mount down here. When it seized, it hit so hard, it actually broke this damn thing. It must have cocked the crankshaft just enough that it literally ripped this apart. The two lead bolts were loose. So these, well, alright, I shouldn't say that. Towards the rear of the saw, these two were actually loose. These three were still tight. But it just did a number on this poor old engine, I'm afraid. So, the good news, Jim, if you want to proceed with doing repairs, I have one of these that I parted out that had some other issues. And I don't honestly remember what they ended up being, but I've got a good piston cylinder, good used crankshaft, good used back plate here. I mean, you're still going to be looking at a good, safely a good $100, maybe a little bit more in parts by the time I throw in a couple new gaskets. But that's where it's at. As she sits, there was no way we were going to put that back together and get her running. So I'll reach out to you in an email and see what you'd like to do.